Hi, I'm Wendy, Bree's mom. And the other day I was asked this question by a really nice lady. She was trying to word it properly, and she said, how did you manage caregiving for practically 37 years, a couple of months short of 37 years? And this is a whole book. This is not just a couple of minutes of explaining, but I only had a couple of minutes to, but there will be a book I'll write on this one day. How do you manage, so I had to think of simplistically, she had 4 children. I never, in a nice way, asked her, how did you manage 4 children? My mom had 6 and ran a restaurant too. I have no idea how that woman did that. To me, she was amazing. So it's one day at a time, first of all. That's how you manage. I had a strong moral, I was taught, raised with a strong moral fiber and sense to life of knowing what was right and what was wrong. And I think that matters. And we're all connected, whether we want to believe it or not. In quantum physics, it's called entanglement. And I've always made it very basic from a Christian standpoint, and I'm sure that's similar in every religion, is Jesus said, how you treat the least of my brethren, you treat me. Bree wasn't the least, as far as I was concerned. I always, and honestly, thought many times she was so much more advanced than I was. I was definitely the one learning, You could call it also, there was a story, I think it's called The Sacrificial Angel, where there's an angel in heaven who is ready to just move on, but she hears someone call for help. And I think that's what happened, because I was probably pleading and begging for help. So, you love your child, no matter, as far as I'm concerned, when Bree was brought to me, and she didn't even breathe on her own for 20 minutes. She looked like she'd been through a little battle when she had brought to me, but this feeling came out of me that shocked me. It was very much like, I think it's instinctual of any human mother to her child or an animal mother to her child. Protection is there. So you manage one day at a time. Your life, your child's life is, you told, she's at risk. She's not going to live long, all the bad news. But I think it's natural for any mother to then fight and do whatever they can to turn that around. I also, and I can't tell you where it came from, but I believe for healing you need to do whatever it takes. And, my life changed overnight with Bree being born. And, fortunately I'm a reader. The doctors also, fortunately, didn't have anything but drugs to offer me. And so I started my own research. And I had, I guess, a strong, I was brought up with a strong spiritual background. And I think that, how did I manage? I mean, one crisis after another, you just get through it. Unfortunately, as I've always said, my daughter was not the problem. The problem was how society looks at my daughter. And, my daughter would be the worst thing that supposedly could happen to a mother having a child. Rare chromosome deletion wasn't genetic for us. So another thing is, it wasn't genetic for my husband and I. So I basically looked at it, and don't think I didn't go through years of self-questioning and, the typical, what did I do, But I see Bree as a God-given purpose. I mean, it wasn't genetic. She came to me. I was meant to be her mom and her caregiver, and so that was it. So I didn't have to question my purpose for 37 years. I knew what my purpose was. So I manage by the essentials where you have to be healthy, you have to look after yourself. You don't know how long you're going to be carrying, how many lifts you're going to. You have to stay in shape to the best of your ability. And the two foundations were having a spiritual practice and eating really plant-based foods. And when I have given cooking classes in the past, I have said, there is no way I would be medication-free without eating these plant-based foods. And, only one time in all the years with Bree, I was on some anxiety medication for a year. And the reason that happened was because society does not value people like my daughter, and who my daughter was. That is what makes it so hard. Bree herself was just beautiful. It was just an amazing light. But fighting, it took 27 years to get aid support. That is, how can you even wrap your head around that? 27 years. I was on a waiting list that I don't even think existed for more than a decade to get aid support. The only way I got it is I had a nervous breakdown. And, 3 doctor's letters and ending up in the hospital and then on medication for a year. That's a pretty sad state of affairs for the greatest country in the world, that people have to go through so much to basically care for their child. And I was the cheapest solution. That's another thing. Because of the food, Bree didn't have, besides the day she passed away, the only other time she was in the hospital was when she was 11. And before that was when she was real little and we weren't doing the diet. I did all the programming here at home. So really, supporting the parent is the cheapest way to go. So how did I manage? I managed by eating really good food and praying a lot and begging a lot. I always read motivational stuff and kept myself inspired. Another point of this question is, how do you manage afterwards, which is right now more difficult than because you know what your purpose is when you're caring for your loved one. At least you should know that that's exactly where you're supposed to be. If you're in that situation, there's no accidents. And it does mean that your whole life is to change. And that's a good thing. My whole life changed. I mean, we owned a house. We had to sell everything to do what we had to do for Bree. I had to move to another country to get information I wanted for her. But it didn't matter, because what mattered was the well-being of this child. And that I did. I wanted to keep her at home with me. I wanted her to be medication-free and happy and healthy. And I did that. And no, I'm not more courageous than anybody else. I'm not. I have a lot of fears and questionings and anxiety and all that. But I manage it by living a plant-based diet and a healthy lifestyle, and I walk, and there's so much to this. I've got to keep it short, because it really is a book full of how do you do this and do it in a healthy way that it's a win-win for everybody. But it really is willingness to do whatever it takes, which doesn't mean, okay, plant-based diet is good for my daughter, but I'm not going to do it. No, this is meant for everybody in the family to get involved in this, because your special needs hurt child is bringing you an opportunity of a lifetime. They need the best food and care, and the parent is the one that can give that. And with that, they bring the whole family along with them, if you can see that. I'll finish with, there was a story just on TV the other day. I was waiting for the weather, and this story came on about a mom who had a child with neurological problems, and the medications and everything, the child was just getting worse. And so she started studying her own research, and she found out the foods that cause the most inflammation are gluten, sugar, meat, and dairy. Top four. I mean, I could go into more, but top four. And she took those out, and her son recovered. But the funny thing is when it came on as a news story, I mean, I'm going, how stupid do they think people are? They're going, oh my God, food. Well, food makes us, makes ourselves. It makes us. So it's not rocket science. And then they were going, yes, lots of fruits and vegetables, but you got to be careful. Careful of what? Fruits and vegetables don't hurt you. And the interesting thing is you got to realize that the television is their sponsors are the pharmaceutical companies. So they've got to walk a very thin line between what they can say. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to know that food matters. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And yet, doctors do not study nutrition. And I just talked to a graduating nursing class at Kobe, and they all told me they study nothing about food, nothing about nutrition. So that's what makes our cells, but we're not going to study about it. So that was really, is really important. It's still important to me, how I'm getting through the grieving process. I'm still researching, still learning. There are things I'm learning that I wish I had known for Bree, because I think they would have made a major difference. And so that's how I managed and I was lucky, because my daughter changed my life for the better. And I said, I am not going to cry through this. And the hardest part is when you have such a bright light in your life for almost 40 years, 37 years, is then you have to figure out how you manage without that strong purpose or channel it in some way. And you know what? It's interesting because I have to start over basically at almost 67 at the end of the month. There are countries, because people have written me and emailed me, where doing what I have done, the person actually gets a pension, and I'm going, oh my. Because normally when you work at any job for 35, 40 years, you retire with a pension. And so it's going to be interesting, but it always works out. It always has. But, caring for our loved ones shouldn't be a struggle, not because of the person, but because of fighting with agencies, fighting with government agencies, all the people that are supposedly put in place. And it's a constant fight to get just basic services. And hopefully I will be in a position to change that. I am in the process of slowly putting a book together on how I cook for Bree, and I do want to write about caregiving because it's so important. And it truly is a spiritual journey.